one. Live from Van down by the river.
Starring Mike
Murray.
This
is
SNL.
SNL. By the numbers.
Numbers.
Chalamet returns. Tiny horse is all grown up. Baldwin cameos. There's the opening haiku. We are covering episode 952 of Saturday Night Live, season 49, episode 4. I am Mike Murray of the SNN, and I want to welcome back Victoria Franso. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
I am excited to talk about Mr. Chalamet.
Awesome. Did you like the show?
I did. It was a lot of new to me's in there. I haven't seen anything of Timothee's prior, not even the last time he hosted, but we'll talk about that.
All right. And welcome back, as always, Jon Schneider. He's the Neve to my Max of this network, so always happy to have my OG on the show.
Yeah, and I feel like Victoria just catfished me with what she said. I can't believe she hasn't seen the first Chalamet episode. That was one of the best episodes of season 46, and it was pretty much the same episode, right? Like it's like as close as you can get between 1 and 2 for host. That was this episode. So very excited to be back with you, Mike. Always love being a part of the show. This is where we started things off. So very excited to get to talk through all the stats of the week with you.
Absolutely. I mean, this was like a direct sequel, no? To that Chalamet episode. Yeah, we're gonna dive into it, but that aspect of it, I thought
our first By the Numbers show, by the way, was probably like, or maybe our second one that we did was pretty soon after this episode. So we once did discuss Chalamet on an SNL Stats By the Numbers back in the day.
Yeah, and I was excited. I felt like that Paul Rudd on Hot Ones, that like meme, like me and John, like look at us, like we're still doing it. We have a return, like look,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I thought the show was good, but let's look at some screen time. Let's dive into it, and Victoria will take it away and find out how similar that show was, and then we'll look at that after.
All right.
First, I would love to be the hot sauce on the table in this Sean Evans and Paul Rudd moment. I just would love to be a watcher for you. But that being said, taking over the screen is Timothée Chalamet with 22 minutes and 56 seconds. Coming up right after him is Heidi Gardner with 11 minutes and 14 seconds, which I love. I miss seeing a lot of her. Then we have boygenius with 8 minutes and 54 seconds. Followed by Phoebe Bridgers at 70 minutes and 31 seconds, Julian Baker at 7 minutes and 27 seconds, Lucy Dacus, if I'm not mistaken, is 7 minutes and 7 seconds, and then going back to our regular cast members with James Austin Johnson at 6 minutes and 21 seconds, Ega Wodum with 6 minutes and 20 seconds, John Higgins up there for the very first time with 6 minutes, or at least the first I know of, with 6 minutes and 4 seconds, with Colin Jost right behind him at the 5-minute range with 5 minutes and 26 seconds, Chloe Trost, newbie, with 5 minutes and 1 second, Kenan Thompson with 4 minutes and 33 seconds, head babyface himself, and then there's Sarah Sherman at 4 minutes and 25 seconds, followed by 3 threes of Mikey Day at 3 minutes and 36 seconds. Punky Johnson, 3 minutes and 32 seconds. I've been saying I want more Punky, and I finally got more Punky, but I still could use a little more. And then rounding out the 3-minute mark is Bowen Yang at 3 minutes and 29 seconds. Then we have other babyface, Marcelo Hernandez at 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Andrew Dismukes at 2 minutes and 18 seconds, Michael Che at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and then Molly Carney at 1 minute and 36 seconds, Chloe Feynman 1 minute 33 seconds, which is surprising to me. I feel like we got way more than that from her, but nonetheless, the numbers don't lie. Our PDD boys, Ben Marshall at 1 minute and 23 seconds, Martin Herlihy at 1 minute 20 seconds, the best Tim Scott impersonation I ever did see by Devin Walker at 1 minute and 12 seconds. And then guest a special guest of Alec Baldwin at 13 seconds. Last but not least, we have Steve Higgins at 6 seconds, and then Michael Longfellow with a great Bill Hader impersonation at 5 seconds.
All right, John, any surprises here? We got Heidi back on the top.
Not surprised about Heidi being back at the top. I feel like she is the heart of the show for many episodes since the beginning of season 48. So, very strong performance from her here at 11 minutes and 14 seconds. Statistically, really dominant in terms of her comparison to her next closest cast member. Almost doubles the time, like a minute shy of doubling the time of the next closest cast member. So, I mean, that is a huge, huge discrepancy between the top cast member and the second. I have to wonder, Mike, if that is the biggest discrepancy we've seen between a cast member and the second cast member in a given episode. Do you know of that?
I'll look into that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So really impressive from Heidi over here. I mean, on the other side of things, I'm really sort of interested in the trajectory of Kenan Thompson this season. It's the first season in a long time that I could remember where Kenan is really not dominating statistically. Have we reached his peak? I know we're talking about a career that never seems to end, but is it possible that he actually peaked in 47 and 48 and we're going to now look at the tail end of his career? That's a question that I'm interested in. And then my other big story of the week is really the second-year players in Michael Longfellow, Molly Carney, and Devin Walker have really done practically nothing in this season so far.
Right.
Just putting it out there.
Sometimes I'll throw on the phrase danger watch. Like we're in danger watch right now for Molly and Longfellow. So I looked at his stats from last year. He was at 327. Well, that's what he is for the season right now. So he's averaging 52 seconds per episode. He was at 927 at this point last year. That's just through his first 4 episodes. And then I always like to go back and see, not making any predictions or saying anything, bad. No omens here. But Aristotle, 4 minutes, 53 seconds in his first 4 episodes. Lauren Holt, 4:10 in her first 4. So Michael Longfellow at 327. That's like super low. So just wanted to bring that to the table first. And he also trails all 3 Destroy Boys. So they're in the montage now. They're getting a sketch a week. And Michael Longfellow's, in 7 seconds in the rap battle sketch from Bad Bunny and now 5 seconds in a pre-tape. We didn't even see him live. So, John, where does it go from here for Michael Longfellow?
I love Michael Longfellow. I think out of the 4 sophomore players on the cast, I actually think he has maybe the strongest potential. Like when all is said and done, he has the ability to end up being maybe the greater cast member out of these. I know Marcelo has like the skills, but I do think Michael Longfellow has like a uniqueness to him that I think is really, really strong. Devin and Molly, I'm still waiting to see what we could possibly see from them. But anyways, so I think Mikey Longs has it in him. I just don't know what exactly is happening there. And this was the point that I really wanted to make to the 2 of you tonight, and then I'll stop talking, which is, I keep thinking about this. I think if you went to like 90% of people who watch SNL and you said who is a feature player and who is a repertory player, they would have no idea what you were talking about. I think that is a category that, yes, you see it in the montage. Yes, we talk about it here. But the naked eye cannot tell the difference between a feature player and a repertory player in the way that you could back in the day, where these were mostly extras in sketches or once in a while popped off. So to me, if that is the case, why are we getting so little from some of these feature players? Because the show hasn't treated feature players like feature players in a very long time. And that's like one of those things that I'm thinking about for a while now.
Great point. Obviously, the bottom ones we can tell are featured players, but Sarah and JJ being now in the upgraded, they've since lapped Punky and Andrew, which I've mentioned that a few times. So they're have superseded that, but I'm not seeing a big jump from the new ones other than Marcelo. But I have to bring this up before I forget. We did a preseason by the numbers with our friend Darren from SNL Nerds, and I made the bold prediction that Jostin Shea would step down after Christmas. So that was my bold take. And is there a theory that Michael Longfellow could be prepping to take the desk and we might not have seen a lot from him working out his weekend update pieces. Because John, correct me if I'm wrong, but have we not? I don't think we've seen like in the rundown sheets that he's had like a big thing cut. Can you think of one?
No, he hasn't. Sarah was cut from week 2. Punky and Heidi were cut from week 3, and the Sarah and Punky things have since aired. So really, no.
Right, and that's for sketch, for weekend update, for anything, right?
Oh, I mean, he's been in sketches. Like, for example, this week we talked about on the roundtable a bit. He had a cut sketch that he was in, which was the Golden Bachelorette sketch, that Heidi was the Golden Bachelorette and he was like an older gentleman who was, suiting her. And so, I mean, there's opportunities. I mean, I could sort of open up my internal notes here to check how many sketches we had from season 49 so far that Michael Longfellow was cut from. I see there's a Bud Light Both Sides commercial that was cut from episodes 1 and 2 that he was in a pre-tape there. Dolphins cheerleader sketch in episode 2. A Ghouls sketch in episode 3, and then again this Golden Bachelorette sketch. So that's 4, 4.5, I guess, sketches that he's been cut from this season so far. So yeah, there are opportunities there. They just haven't made the show.
Right, and I'm just thinking maybe we can talk to our friends who went to Dress and saw some of those, but I don't know if there were any of those where like Michael Longfellow led pieces, like an update feature. So just trying to follow the breadcrumbs, look for little clues, maybe that if that's coming and they know that it's on the horizon, it might make sense if they didn't have him appearing at the desk like he does, and then the next, in the new year in 2024, he's the host of Update. So it might be a little less jarring. And we've been talking about, me and Haynes on the last By the Numbers, how Update's been getting shorter. We've had 3 sub 10-minute updates, 1 desk correspondent for each. So something's going on. There's something in the water right now at 8H with Update. And I think my preseason prediction, if that is the case, we're going to look back and say this made sense. So Victoria, what do you think about, our conversation on Michael Longfellow, and if my prediction could hold any weight at all?
Well, I was going to ask, do you think anyone would join Longfellow at the desk, or would it be him solo dolo?
I've been on the record saying that they need/want to have a woman at the desk. So I would predict, if I had to, that it would be Longfellow and somebody else, either a writer or someone from outside. But I could see that happening with Longfellow and a female co-host.
Okay. Yeah, I think now that you call it out, that's extremely plausible. I would hope it's not the other option of them trying to push him out or him just not getting stuff. But as we just said that the opportunities are there. They just haven't made it to air. And that rhymed. But I hope that's the case. As much as I would hate to see Che and Jost go, I think they're incredibly funny, and they are 2 of my favorite parts of the show currently. I think it's just time to pass the torch to someone new. And I think if there's anyone from this list here who's going to do that well, it would be Michael Longfellow. If you haven't seen his stand-up, it's phenomenal. And, I think he has the charisma and the talent to do it.
I respect the bold call, but I don't understand why Che and Jost would come back for the start of season 49 and leave after half a season. Like, that doesn't, there's not like a lot of like great magic there to me, because with Cecily, I understood.
Well, I think it's because the same way that everyone came back after the SNL at Home, and now a writer's strike truncated season 48. So it might just be that they didn't want to go out like that. So if not knowing it's your last episode could kind of feel not so warm and fuzzy.
Okay.
So if they want to come back in, be in the room for the regime change, Christmas would be a great time to do it. Get the last joke swap, bid farewell to that team. I don't know. What do you think, John?
I think the mystery person booked for the Christmas show could indicate that you have a point, but we'll get to that over the next few weeks. But
we won't mention who that is. But.
Yes, we'll be nice. But regardless, if that's a possibility, I would find it very bizarre to then and I mean this nicely, Mike. Like, I find it very bizarre, to your point, to then not give Longfellow a lot of screen time if they were grooming him for the update desk. Like if anything, if this was, I saw somebody in the chat, Gelp mentioned Colin Quinn and Norm. Like Colin Quinn was doing a bunch of like update pieces as a correspondent prior to being an anchor. Like I think if that was the case and this was really what was going on here, Michael Longfellow would make 2 or maybe even 3 appearances at the update desk in the fall prior to actually becoming that anchor. I would be surprised if that was the direction that they ended up going in. And again, out of those 3 featured players, besides Marcelo, who I think is really, really crushing it in his second year, like from Devin and Molly and Michael Longfellow, despite Michael Longfellow's 5 seconds, I actually don't think he's the one in the biggest trouble here. I still think that Devin and Molly are the ones who are needing to find their place on the show more than Michael Longfellow, who is, clearly very good at something very specific.
True. All good points. But it will be fun to look back, because I just think that if that is the case, then he might be doing a lot behind the scenes. For all I know, he could be shadowing Che and Jost if that were the case. So maybe he's not writing a lot of material for himself that he would normally do to propel himself further. If that makes sense.
I was going to say there's probably a lot of prep behind the scenes that they're doing and wanting him to focus on that's keeping him from being on air.
Yeah, I don't buy it for what it's worth, but I'll just say, I think he just had a bad week. That's all it was. And I think, I think, like I said, I don't think that the viewers know the difference between the featured and repertory players. I do believe there is a learning curve to SNL, so it makes sense why you would have, people who have, in terms of longevity, not been on the show that long, not appear as much. But we are now, I guess, 22 episodes into the 4 of their careers at the show. At this point, 22 episodes into an SNL career, I'll say maybe at most 30, but really this is the point where we should start to understand what it is you can do at the show. Mm-hmm. And with all due respect to Devin, who was given a really fun role as a presidential candidate and has had a couple of really nice sketches, and Molly, who had a fantastic Ana de Armas episode at the end of last season, I'm still not 100% sure what their range is at the show yet. I'm waiting to see that. And I would love to be able to come on here. We're now halfway through the first half of season 49. And I would love to be back here for the Christmas by the Number show and tell you that I've seen at least a couple of things from Molly Carney and Devin Walker that I could feel confident in going into the second half of the season.
Right, and I'll give an update on their career, because John, you mentioned that 22 episodes into their career. Here we are, 18 last year for this year. So the standings right now for that class of last year would be, I'll include Marcelo too. He's at 1 hour 6 minutes 50. So this is every episode that Marcelo's been in so far, and I'm going to say the rest as well. Molly at 53:04. Devin at 54:36, so he's actually ahead of Molly by a minute. And then Michael Longfellow at 48:41. So if we're going on stats alone and not the eye test or the comedy test, then Michael Longfellow is in 4th place of his class. So I'll go to you, Victoria, with your background in sketch. What should the show do with, well, let's start with Molly, because I thought they were so great in that pre-tape and the Brendan Gleeson, and then they had their big moment at the end. So both of those cases, Molly playing themselves. Other than that, they're playing old women and men. So where can we put Molly?
Or Kevin James.
Right.
Who doesn't fall under either.
Kevin James is a man.
He's not old. He's iconic.
I said old women and men.
I want to be careful with how I word this, because I don't want to accuse. As someone who has as a different life experience and is kind of forced to see things because of said life experience, I'm just going to call it out. Devin Walker and Molly Kearney have very different life experiences, and it's kind of a bummer that we're not seeing more of them. It's kind of a bummer that we have to fight for Punky Johnson to get more screen time. It's kind of a bummer that we have to fight for more Bowen Yang. And even for someone like Marcelo Hernandez, who is incredibly talented and very funny. I mean, this is you can't doubt it 1 minute. But if we're going to do diversity, and as someone who's part of an SNL diversity program, I think we need to see more of it. Are we writing for those people and those experiences? And I think that's a concern of mine, if I'm being completely honest, and that's something I want to see more of. So I think Molly can bring a lot to the table. Molly has brought a lot to the table. If you've seen their stand-up and their sets, it's incredibly funny. And they have a lot to say, and they have a great set of experiences that they could share. Same thing with Devin. So I would love for them to get, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I would love to see more opportunities for them to kind of own something. The same way we saw this past Saturday, Chloe Trost own something. Chloe Trost is on here for 5 minutes and 1 second when you just said that these folks only had 3 minutes. So it's I just want to call that out there and put it out. Being SNL needs to address that if the case is that they're not giving them the same amount of opportunities to share their.
And I'm glad you said it, because I think it's really important to address. It's an important subject to talk about, and it's something that we don't shy away from here at the SNN. So we could talk about diversity at the show and how it does affect people. It is a subject that I have brought up many times on our Cast Countdown podcast that I've been doing whenever we come across a black man who was maybe on the show in decades prior who said that there was no black writers around to help get his stuff on. Like, that is something that you have to take into account when you're evaluating somebody's legacy at the show. Now, the question for me is that the case now? And I'm not playing devil's advocate because I'm white. I'm playing devil's advocate because I have been told that that SNL has tried to fix a lot of these things over the last 10 years to put more diverse voices in the writer's room. And I was under the impression, and this is what we're doing here. We're trying to evaluate stats as objectively as possible, which is like, I was under the impression that Devin Walker and Molly Carney are not getting stuff on the show, not because they're black or non-binary. It's more because of, them trying to figure out the SNL game. So I'm not saying that you're wrong in what you're saying. And I think it's really important to put that out there, that we're talking about, people who don't typically succeed at SNL in the traditional sense. But at the same time, if that is the case, like if they're not doing well on the show because the system is still in place where people, where it's always just white people that do well on the show, then I would love to know that, because I haven't heard that from anybody that's worked in the show in the last 10 years. Like, my understanding is that the show has gotten way better at that, and I need to applaud them for their efforts in doing stuff. Besides maybe their booking choices of the host, I think that like SNL has produced sketches in ways now that they never would have 10 years ago. So I'm trying my very, very best to evaluate everybody on an equal playing field. And if it's not that case, then I guess that's like, I would love something to be spoken of. So like, we know that.
I mean, and that's, I don't want to take away from what SNL's done. Like, there are obviously incredible improvements. I don't want to take away from that. I don't want to diminish that, but there is always work to be done.
Yeah.
And, the SNL game wasn't created for certain people. You know what I mean? There's still going to be little kinks in the system that we need to iron out, but I don't know. Like it said, I don't know what's going on. It is just kind of interesting to see. It's just coincidental. And so obviously there's always room for improvement. There's always room to be better and to be more outspoken. And maybe it's just giving them a little bit more opportunity to find out what it is that they can really do for the show.
Yeah, and just to put a button on this important discussion, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't provide some stat context. So last season 48, the top 5 screen time getters of the cast, not including update anchors: number 1, Kenan Thompson; number 2, Bowen Yang; Heidi Gardner; Mikey Day; Ego Odom. So in a vacuum, if I said these are the faces and voices we are seeing the most, and I listed those 5 names, it would be hard to say like SNL has a white guy problem like they did in the 90s or something. So just trying to do my job by saying who we're seeing the most in the cast. So one week we see Michael Longfellow at 5 seconds. And, we see Molly at a minute 36, and we're seeing Marcelo at 2:43. So it's going to ebb and flow, of course. And of course, Marcelo had a huge episode with Bad Bunny as well. So things like that to keep in consideration when we're seeing episode by episode. So that's the beauty of the opening of By the Numbers. We look at one sample size of an episode, and the end of it, we look at the entire season as a whole. So let's move on talking about the Timothée Chalamet episode. So like I said earlier, we have a chance now for the first time that we saw a host debut and then return in the tenure of the SNL stats to SNN transition. So I looked at them directly. So John, I saw you put up the screen time of the remaining cast. Interesting enough, no Keenan in that episode. So that was a rarity. He was filming a show, Keenan. So other than that, we saw, the Heidi numbers and the Ego numbers and things, the remaining cast members. So I'm going to look.
Yeah, just to be clear, you could see that on our social media pages. So we posted that on Instagram. It's still on the grid, and it's still on our Twitter account. But by the way, Mike, Keenan was shut out twice in his career, but that was the only episode in his career that he was absent for.
Right. So that's just was funny because you'd think, oh, who was in the cast then? All right, well, Keenan probably had a good night. Just funny that he wasn't not even there. All right, so I have the season 46 Chalamet data compared with the season 49 Chalamet data. And I did a percentage change because those are my favorite stats to do. So I looked at the power ranking of Timothée Chalamet in that episode. And again, that's to measure the impact that he had on a given night. So he went from a 253 to a 322. So using this metric, Timothée Chalamet had about a 28% better episode, if you want to go by that. Screen time went up almost 50%. So he was 18th out of 20 in season 46. So he was in the bottom 3 hosts for screen time with 15 minutes, 22 seconds. And now he was up to 22 minutes, 56 seconds, almost, 23 minutes. Made one more appearance. We talked about update being shorter, a little bit more room for a sketch or a pre-tape. In this case, we had 3 pre-tapes. And monologue a little bit longer. His sketch time was up over 5 minutes. So 66% more Timothée Chalamet live on the stage. And his pre-tapes went up a little bit, 13%. And I looked at his quote unquote A roles. So looking back on that episode, we had a long Dionne Warwick talk show sketch where Chalamet came out as Harry Styles for like 5 seconds. And this case, he was the lead or one of the leads in every sketch or pre-tape other than the impression, revolving door when he was Scorsese. So, Victoria, I guess maybe I shouldn't ask Victoria if you haven't seen the season 46 one.
I need to clarify. I didn't watch it when it aired. I did watch it to prepare for this show. I watched some of the pieces. Yeah, so this is the most I've packed in everything I've seen Timothée Chalamet in. I packed into the past few days. So I have watched some things since just to get myself familiar. And everyone saw the Yeet skate with Pete, so I'm familiar. Boy loves to sing. Skirt. Yeah, skirt. Thank you. Yeah. Okay,
so Victoria, did you have
what someone else called Pete once?
Right. Somebody did. Yeah. Did you have which one did you like better? Let's open with a softball question. Season 46 or season 49?
49. I think he got to showcase a little bit more for me personally as someone who wasn't familiar with him. I got to see more of his talent, and I think just on the monologue rap alone, it won me over. So 49 I think is my favorite, though. Shout out to the coronavirus sketch from 46. That was a really good one.
That was I think all-time season 46 live sketch was the coronavirus one and the Lexus Holiday to Remember pre-tape from that episode. So not even including, Tiny Horse and the hip hop roundtable. So John, I have not a softball question for you. So looking more macro, I feel like if a host returns, we should assume that their first was a success, because why would you invite someone back? So what are you looking for in a return host? What can you put your finger on that, all right, they're coming back, whether they're promoting whatever they have, whatever reason they have to be on the show, what are you looking for a second time host? Because we have one coming up this Saturday with Jason Momoa.
Yeah, I think if they're young and energetic, I think that is a huge factor here. I think if you're ready, like if you're still of the right age to bring it, you're not canceled yet. So I'll checks all the boxes there from Timmy. But actually, maybe not given what happened at the end of this the episode. But yeah, I do want to give some context to these numbers just a little bit, and then I'll go back to your question, Mike, which is we just have to keep in mind, per Victoria's point about there being a coronavirus sketch, that this season 46 episode with Chalamet happened while SNL was still dealing with COVID, meaning that the sketches themselves were produced under strict circumstances where people could only be in the studio for a certain amount of time. The writers were meeting with the performers on Zoom. It was very crazy. Chalamet basically didn't get the full SNL experience here. And there were also less sketches at the time to account for the fact that they had less rehearsal time. Eventually, I think towards Chalamet's episode, it starts to normalize a bit, but the uptick in numbers makes sense here, not only because Chalamet is a very strong host, but because now they have the confidence in him to be able to pull off more on the show. Whereas when you're bringing in a first-time host under the circumstances in which season 46 was being created, you're not going to give the hosts a lot to do. They just don't have the time to work with them to get to know the show. So I think these numbers make perfect sense here. Had Chalamet hosted in 45 or 44, I still think we would see an uptick in numbers, because as you host more and more, you're going to become more familiar with the SNL process. But yeah, he does check a lot of the boxes for me, Mike, as to what I would look for in a return host. I think, like I said, super popular. The fans seem to love him. And he really did host one of the best episodes of season 46.
Agreed. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we can't ignore the COVID vibe that SNL had to deal with and the restrictions and all that. But just again, to push back with some stats, Daniel Kaluuya had over 20 minutes as a first-time host in that season. Dan Levy had
much
over
later
20
in
minutes.
the season.
Right. Yep. Dan Levy. That was still in winter though, right?
Yeah, I guess I would say like the pre-Christmas episodes, I think, were severely impacted by COVID. Those first 6 episodes specifically, Chris Rock, Bill Burr, Adele,
Issa Rae.
John Mulaney, Issa Rae, Adele, John Mulaney, and Chappelle. I think those ones were like COVID rules to the max.
Right. And the stats do back that up a little bit. There's things to nitpick at, because like Anya Taylor-Joy was the last host and she had one of the lowest screen times, but it was a goodbye episode for a few. So important to note. But I will say, John, since I know you've seen every episode of our favorite show, have you ever, can you remember a host that came back and you're like, why are they coming back? They were not great the first time.
Oof. Can I remember a host?
Yeah, I know. Putting you on the spot.
Probably wasn't good. Yeah, I mean, that situation has definitely happened. I just don't know. Well, I guess one of the former presidents of the United States would be a great example. If I could think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's been a few cases. For the most part, I'm pretty happy when people come back to the show. Like I think hosts returning to the show is one of the lifebloods of what makes SNL, right? It's like the feeling of continuity and, getting to know these people. And Chalamet's episode was like the gift for all super fans who love getting to see his first episode and then got to see sketches that he did the first time and reprise them. This is what you want as an SNL fan. So for me, I think it's very important to bring hosts back, but it is you have to be very, very careful when you do it, that you're picking the right person and that they're the right time of their career. And also that we don't overexpose these hosts to SNL, which has happened a few times.
Right. Like Jake Gyllenhaal was one that long time between first and second. So Victoria, my question for you is, I don't know if you're a big movie buff, but sequels traditionally are not as good as the first. So you said that season 49 you liked better. So you have like Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, or The Hangover 2. It's like, let's just remake the movie that everyone loved, and then they'll pay to see it again. Like, that's a strategy. Sometimes when they deviate too much, it just doesn't live up to the first one. So do you like this approach, that to really call back these things? It wasn't that long ago, so it's a little fresher in the memory. It's 3 seasons earlier. So is this, I always like to ask that question to the guests, if I notice a trend and the stats can back it up, I usually like to ask someone's opinion of, is this a good move by the show?
Yeah, if something works, if nothing's broken, don't fix it. But I mean, for example, I like the arc of the horse, and we got to see that follow through. But then, uh, like the hip hop, what is it called? Oh man,
Rap roundtable.
Rap Roundtable. We could have used Pete Davidson in that again. Him solo was a little bit different, but still funny. It was still enjoyable. But that being said, I think them using things that work, also that feel familiar for him. I think too, Timothée Chalamet's style is very interesting to me of what I've seen in the past few days. Mind you, I've not seen much of him besides him kissing Kylie Jenner in that one paparazzi photo. Nonetheless, I think he does well if he can revisit something. I think he's kind of method in that way. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but yeah, could be good. I think you just have to have the right host to do that with.
Right. And to wrap up, John, I'll say, what if Timothée Chalamet hosts 3 seasons from now and they have a third Tiny Horse and a third Wraparound Table? I know this is hypothetical, so we can't judge the content of what that would be and if it's funny or not, but would you be a huge eye roll, or let's keep this thread going because this is what we should expect, kind of like a Mulaney New York musical?
I think you should absolutely keep it going. And I know that there's going to be listeners, some of them watching us live, who completely disagree with me and be like, no, we need new, fresh stuff. But, I think that the way that SNL does these things are to varying degrees of freshness. I think Giant Horse was a really, really great take on Tiny Horse. And if you have the right idea, definitely go for it. It's fine if we, in advance of the episode, know where a couple things are going to take place in the episode. And you would just have to keep in mind, again, I've said this story many times on the podcast, and I'll just reiterate it here because it's relevant. When I was in high school and I was falling in love with the show, I would sit down on YouTube or wherever wherever I could watch SNL sketches, and I would watch, a bunch of Penelopes or a bunch of Stefans eventually. These were the types of things that were really great to get your friends into the show when you're like, okay, well, there's this really funny character or these really funny sketches that they do, and you get to show them a few of them, and they're maybe 5 minutes a piece. So for me, I think that, for Timothée Chalamet fans who really love him and he's super popular, these are the expectations. I think people would be disappointed, honestly, if they didn't get to see another version of the horse, even if it's in a completely different way. You can reimagine how they do it. But I think that involving the horse in the show, having Smoked Cheddar Dasketta back, I think these are things that people will ask for in season 52, if that is the next time we see Chalamet on the show.
I agree. I'm always of the thought that I want interesting SNL and lore of SNL and meta SNL. So yeah, I almost don't even care the quality. I mean, of course I do as a viewer, but as an analyst of the show, it's more fun to weave threads between different data points and from different eras and all that. So when we have someone like Molly Shannon come back and get, a rare character or, her biggest character, that's always just fun to analyze from that POV. I will have to mention, though, because we started in season 46, and a big topic, if you go back and listen, was why doesn't SNL do recurring things as much anymore? They're doing recurring concepts, but there's not a lot of recurring characters. So, but we did have Lisa from Temecula sequel, which I feel like people did not like the second one, and the first one might have been the biggest sketch of the season. And then we had The Protective Mom with Pedro Pascal, which people also loved the first time, and I think they liked it equally the second time. So I know anecdotal evidence, case by case, but SNL is definitely taking a risk when they do that, and so I'm in favor of that. Victoria, do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I like Lisa from Temecula. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that it makes you familiar with the show, and especially I love that John mentioned Penelope. What a great reference. It made me happy. But to his point, using that, and if it's a really great character and a great scene, that's going to attract more and more people because they're going to be anticipating that character coming, and you'll garner a new audience that way too.
Look, and just remember, guys, that this happened this episode.
She used to be Lisa from Temecula. Now she's Vivek from Ramaswamy.
Tried to get the timing right on that one. But yes, totally agree with everything you guys are saying. I do think that I do think that recurring characters for cast members are much more valuable to the show than recurring characters for a host. Just putting that out there, because I do think like the idea of when you go back in the 70s and you don't know when a Coneheads episode is going to pop up, but all of a sudden, hey, we have the Coneheads with this host. That's kind of cool. Like, that's the type of thing that I've been advocating on the show since we started podcasting, which is like, get back to the point where there's sketches that we really like, where you can have fun with them, create storylines, and reimagine them with different hosts. So I think SNL is getting there, but, you know, I'll take what I can get right now. I do think Protective Mom and, you know, this type of thing that we got with Timmy, like, these are all positive things for the show. So I don't want to bite the hand that feeds us at the same time.
Right. And people have been speculating for a couple seasons. When's Emma Stone coming back? She'll be a 5-timer. Got things to promote right now. And I would be very disappointed if we didn't get the Lejeune de Paris with Emma Stone, because I love that sketch, the French like dance sketch that she did. So things like that, I would definitely, even though I might say on the podcast a lot that I'm up for anything, that's the case where I'd be like, okay, I need that sketch to come back. So if that's
but how do you do that sketch without Taron Killam?
Why can't you bring him back? I mean, that would be a fun cameo.
Honestly, would be epic. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
And Jay Farrow, same time. Same time.
Jay Farrow would be a ripe cameo.
Oh
yeah,
I dream of it.
Yeah, we did bump into Jay in Montreal, John.
That is very true. Yeah, a really nice guy.
Did he ask about me?
I don't remember.
Oh, awkward.
Yeah,
Okay,
I did interview him, by the way. If you ever want to go check out my interview with Jay Farrow, very funny Jay Farrow interview that we did it just for laughs, not this past year, but the season before.
Which he did some characters for you, John.
He very much did. Yeah, he said he would. He's going to make his grand return to SNL one day.
Can't wait.
Look forward to it.
But yeah, Taron Killam, he's another one that if he hosted Mokiki, I did the Mokiki dance in my dorm room constantly in the middle of the night. So Mokiki does the sloppy swish. That's one that I'd love to see back. And Keenan's still in the cast, so he can still sing it. All right, so we are going to...
You have Garrett Morris come in to host. Keenan will still be in the cast.
Yep. Would love to see that too. All right, so my favorite show of all time, other than SNL, is Seinfeld, which I watch every day. It's my favorite show of all time. That's not SNL, like I said. But so, and in that show, there's a scene with Jerry and Newman in the car, and they're like trying to figure out what day it is. Monday has a feel. Like Tuesday has no feel. Like they're talking about, does it have a feel? And so I've been kind of obsessing. I started the stat last year. I started tracking first sketch in 10-to-1. So I do stats for the breakdowns of their screen time and appearances and where they appear in the show, not just how much or how often. And so I wanted to ask my awesome guests here, does the first sketch have a feel? So right now on the screen, if you're watching with us, you can see who's appeared so far in the first sketch of the night, that's what I'm calling it. It's after the monologue. You know, back in the day, we used to get a lot of fake commercials after that, but a lot of times now we go to commercial following the monologue and it comes back and it's the quote unquote first sketch of the night. And John, I'll start with you. Is there something about the first sketch that you can put your finger on, and does it have a feel? Because 10-to-1s have a feel. People say it all the time. This has 10-to-1 energy. Is there a first sketch energy?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people would say that this is when the show starts, you know, not to take away from the cold open or the monologue, but, you know, those are consistent. Every week we get something similar. I mean, for good or for bad, the cold opens tend to be mostly political. The monologues have the same look and feel, even if they're different concepts week to week. So those are always fun parts of the show, but you know what to expect. It's like having the same appetizer before your main meal every single week. It's like, okay, I know I'm going to have a salad, and then what's going to be the main course? And the main course starts right after the monologue. So of course it has to feel.
And Victoria, what do you think? Here's a tough one for you. What should be the mission of the first sketch? Like, what should they try to accomplish in that first sketch? And don't say be funny.
Well, then I have nothing to say. No, I think it should be energizing folks and getting them ready for the show, setting the tone, setting the energy for the rest of the show and what they decide to do there. I really don't like if and when the first sketches are a little bit slow or calmer. I like them to be a little bit more energetic. It's like, okay, it's 11:30 at night on a Saturday, like, get me pumped up for the rest of the show. I think it should be the hype man for the rest of the episode.
True. That's what I had in my notes. It's just energy, tone setter.
Mhm.
I also put maybe like get the host comfortable, something that's not a lot of heavy
Yep.
lifting that they can really like get their foot in the door, and maybe any nerves can be calmed if you have like a solid sketch led by a cast member. And so one of my stats about first sketch feel is that you're probably going to see Keenan, because I looked at the last 100 episodes and he appears in the first sketch 60% of the time, which I actually thought that was going to be higher. But yeah, he's almost always in the first sketch, especially lately, because in this season we've had 4 episodes. Therefore, we've had 4 first sketches, and Keenan's been in all of them for 4 appearances for 8 minutes and 8 seconds. So if you watch all 4 first sketches this year, you would see Keenan on the screen for 40% of the time. And that accounts for 37% of his screen time this year has been in the first sketch. As a reminder, that was Fox NFL Sunday. For Pete, Rap Battle with Bad Bunny, Chef Show with Bargatze, and then the Museum of Hip Hop panel with Timmy this week. So Keenan, then Mikey, and Ego have so Keenan has been in all 4, and then Mikey and Ego have been in 3, as well as Devin and JJ. So they've appeared the most in those first sketches. So how have you felt, John, about the first 4 first sketches? Have they been strong ones of the night?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really complaining about sketch placement as much this season as I have in seasons past. I think there was maybe one sketch we talked about this week on the Hot Take Show, which was the Shred Zone gym call that maybe had like a little bit of a weird placement. But besides that, I think everything has made sense here. Yeah, I mean, look, I want to be clear. Like, season 49 has been a really solid season so far. Like, there's been some really good episodes and really great production choices that they've made. And I think that this is a great indication of the things that they're doing, that a lot of times we're not complaining about the first sketch of the night. The first sketch of the night has actually been like, oh, this is really fun. Especially when they kick things off the season with Fox NFL Sunday and they had the Travis Kelce thing happening and it was just like broke the internet. Like, yeah, I love what they're doing here. And for this episode, they absolutely had to, if they're going to do the Rap Roundtable sketch, they absolutely had to put it when the most eyeballs are going to be on the show. And that is right after the monologue.
Mm-hmm.
True. And I also think that the first sketch, to your point, John, is definitely open, I think, for the most scrutiny of placement. Like, oh, you put that first? Or, oh, I'm so glad they put that first. Whereas everything else can kind of be dictated by technical things or costume things, or, who did the most heavy lifting in the previous sketch. Maybe they want to even things out like that. But we saw with the rap, the rap battle with Bad Bunny, that we knew that was in late in the show and they actually moved it up. So there are possibilities of moving those around. But just to wrap up the stats here I have on the screen, that Chloe, Dismukes, Marcelo, Bowen, Sarah, Trost, and Colin and Che, of course, haven't appeared at all in a first sketch. So if we see that coming up, it'll be the first time for those folks. And we have, I want to point out that first sketches on average are 31 seconds longer than another sketch that appears in the night. That's to dictate the feel of it. John, does that surprise you, or does that make perfect sense?
Is that just this season, or you're saying like over the last 100 episodes?
Over the last 100 episodes.
Wow, that is I had no idea that was the case, because a lot of times, like you said, those are like we'll see the dress rundown sheets, and those sketches are flipped like a lot. So the fact that that actually makes me think about things from a production perspective, which is that are they limited in the choices they have for the first sketch of the night based on how long that block is between the monologue and the next commercial? I know that they usually do sketch, pre-tape, sketch, or sketch, pre-tape. Yeah, that's a very fascinating thing to think about.
So if you see a live sketch, this is not including Weekend Update, monologue, or cold open, just a live sketch, not pre-tape, it will on average be 4 minutes 36 seconds. So that's based on the last 511 sketches of SNL that I had that number from. 436, and that includes first sketches because that's a live sketch. But if we look at just the first sketch, it's 5 minute 1 second. So I took out the first sketches from the big number to get that number of 31 seconds. So on average, the first sketch of the night is the longest sketch of the night by about 31 seconds. So interesting, they can punch it up, they can cut things, whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a good point. I also wonder if it's not just the longest sketch or the longest best sketch that goes first, but it's also the one that they want to make the least cuts from because it's so good. So then it goes hand in hand. Whereas later in the night, they're like chopping out lines of things to like get it within time and stuff like that. So there's other factors, and I think that's just a really interesting stat.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I will say personally that I always really love that moment of the show. It's maybe one of my favorite moments. I know people like get excited when Weekend Update's starting. But when it comes back from break, like you said, Victoria, like, let's go. The show is starting. And I'm always just so curious of what kind of night are we going to have? And like we mentioned, tone setter, that can be a huge indication. So, John, we had you on after the first episode for Pete, and we didn't do power rankings because we only had one episode. Now here we are with 4 episodes of data. Who do you think is going to be in the top 3 for the power rankings of season 49 thus far?
I have to think Mikey Day is still there. I mean, Mikey's been uber impressive, just really having another great season. I would guess Heidi is probably there. I mean, Heidi must have had a great episode in the power rankings tonight. So I'm going to say that. JJ, maybe, over my top 3. Keenan would be the what you put your money on. But again, as I brought up at the beginning, Keenan's maybe coming down a little bit from his peaks. So it's interesting to think about. Though that would be my guess for the top 3.
All right. Sound choices. And yeah, Keenan had 10 minutes in the first episode. He's been sub 5 the next 3. So interesting to track how Keenan's been doing so far. So here are the season 49 power rankings. And we have Keenan in the 2 because he had a 141 point episode in the Pete Davidson. Went down to a 40 for Bad Bunny, up to a 68 for Bargatze, and he had an 86.6 in the Chalamet episode. Victoria, you want to update the listeners on what the current power ranking is, 1 through 17?
Well, 1, that is so impressive, John. Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. John nailed it, by the way.
I mean, I'd hope so.
I do cover this show.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd hope so. After, I don't know, everything that you do. All right. So power ranking number 1, we're starting off with Mikey Day at 120.1, followed by Keenan Thompson at 84.2. That's quite the gap there. Then we have Heidi Gardner, 81.9. She's had a great last few episodes. Colin Jost at 77.9. Zhaj, also known as James Austin Johnson, at 71.1. Ego Wodum at 70.2. Then we have Bowen Yang, who I'm pleasantly surprised to see this far up at 67.8. Then we have the wonderful, comical, hilarious Sarah Sherman at 55.4, followed by Michael Che at 54.1. And then we have Marcelo Hernandez, funny guy. I see him moving up in the power ranks throughout the season. That's my prediction, but he's at 53.9. Punky Johnson at 45.6. Chloe Feynman at 44.2, which I think is pretty low for her. I'd like to see more of her. So we'll see what happens for the rest of the season. Then Devin Walker at 41.7, Andrew Dismukes at 37.7, which is surprising. And then not surprising are the last 3 with Chloe Trost at 34.2, Molly Carney at 21.2, and then Michael Longfellow at 16.3. Lucky 17. Yeah.
So yeah, we're seeing Marcelo, top 10. That's my takeaway. No surprise, he had 122.5 in the Bad Bunny, which is one of the best scores of the season across the board. And we talk about Punky so much on the show and how we want to see more of her, and her stats are typically bad. That Punky Johnson finished in 17th place behind all the rookies last year. So Punky Johnson's final score average for season 48 was 38.1. It's up to a 45.6. So if you're on Team Punky, which if you're not, then we have a problem. Then you should be happy that Punky on average every show is doing better than last year. So her 4th season, it's about time. And then we have to mention Chloe Trost, big breakout, which that might have been, other than the callbacks, like my favorite. That was the best sketch for me in the night. Also, Chalamet's longest appearance of the show was that sketch playing the moon, which was funny. John, what do you think? You're getting your first look at the updated power rankings.
Yeah, I mean, everything is making sense to me here. I think from the bottom of the rankings, we talked about a lot of the players the second-year players. Andrew Dismukes, I still am looking for a little bit more, but I am happy with some of the stuff we're seeing from Andrew this season. It's marginally better, and I'm happy with that. And I can't complain about Punky either. I mean, Punky, I love her so much, and I'm so happy that she's finally getting a shot at the show. And yeah, I mean, imagine like SNL gave up on Punky before this point, where they got to get, let her cook on the show, and now she's getting this chance. So the 62.6, Mike, is it the highest power ranking in Punky's career?
Let me check right now.
All right, so Michael, check on that from Punky. But yeah, very impressive from her. I could see her continuing to rise. I think she's being trusted more in sketches. She doesn't necessarily have to have a starring sketch now for people to want to put her in their sketch. So for me, very happy about Punky Johnson here.
Yeah, and I loved her little Nikki outfit in the monologue.
Yeah, it was so cute. It was great. She was awesome. It was very funny. And she puts, again, I said this on one of the shows recently, but like, you got to follow Punky on Instagram. She's posting so much great behind the scenes content about SNL and like how she's coming up with sketches. She helped write the monologue this week, so that was cool as well. So yeah, Punky's doing great. I guess a little bit surprised to see Sarah so high. I guess the Fran Drescher thing like really put her up as high, but without that, would drop pretty low, and then everything else makes sense to me.
Yep, that is a high score for Punky, John. The 62.6 this week. Had a better episode with Megan Thee Stallion last season.
Okay,
so that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, this has been maybe my favorite year so far. It's too early to tell, but in regards to power rankings, because I just don't know what we're gonna get. It's so common. I know Keenan's too, but he's behind Mikey right now by 46 points. So or 36 points.
Big gap.
Yeah. So that'll level out, but this might be the first year that Keenan's not number one. I think maybe Beck actually was number one in season 46. So that'll be interesting. And then Sarah Sherman, who had a bad start and then a really great Bargatze episode, like John mentioned, the Fran Drescher sketch and an update appearance. So finally showed up there, and then had a lead in the sketch this week with the sleep study sketch. So that's what's going to be. Dismukes was a 50 last year, and now he's at 37.7. So like how Punky went up, Andrew has definitely went down so far. So and again, the 10-1 this week, the Calm app, that's a sketch that probably could have been cut. I wouldn't have minded if it was cut. But that was some good time for Punky and Andrew, and how often do we get to see the two of them work together? So I liked seeing that aspect of it anyway.
I was gonna say it was wholesome also to see her comfort him. It was nice.
Yeah. Right, and Punky adds to her wig collection that she's been posting about.
Right.
Honestly, Punky has probably some of the best wigs that I've seen.
Top 3 Punky wigs. Let's go, Victoria.
Nikki, obviously. I don't think 2 or 3 really matter after that, but I would say Nikki. What was Mary
You
J.
don't
Blige?
actually have to answer that.
Okay, well, I was going to go for it, and then Queen Latifah. But we'll talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, and it was Mary J. Blige, right? This week.
Yeah, this year this week.
All right, well, that will just about do it. We have Jason Momoa this week again.
Wait, Mike, we have to update the
we're doing the draft. Take it away, John.
As promised, yes, I was told from a very, very kind listener on, I think she messaged me on Reddit last week, who was like, "Hey, you guys didn't update the draft standings. And I was like, well, Haynes wasn't on the draft. So, but we'll try and do this whenever we can. So let me, Mike, you want to vamp for 2 seconds and I'll just grab that quickly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, John, remind me who you had that I can give some.
Yeah, so
give some
I have the
context.
the Johnson and Johnson.
Oh yeah,
here.
the Johnson.
Yeah,
Johnson and Johnson for John.
Exactly. All right, here we go. Yeah, I got that up here. So current standings after week number 4. Team Bill Kenny is in the lead with Mikey and Devin Walker. So that pick of Mikey looking really strong right now. Mikey was in 18 sketches so far this season, Devin in 10, and then gives him 28 points. I'm right now riding number 2 with Johnson and Johnson at 14 and 12, so 26 points. Team Amanda still in number 3 with a Bowen and the combo of Joseph and Jay at 23 points. Then we have Team Sammy tied with Amanda with Keenan and Trost. So pretty surprising that the Keenan and Trost team. I mean, the Trost has been pretty good, but Keenan, you would think would be the sketch leader, is not right now, only 14 sketches. And then Trost is at 9, so that's also 23 points. Thomas Senna has Ego and Dismukes at 21 points, 13 and 8. Zoe Walker has Heidi and Molly Carney, also tied at 29 points, 14 and 7. Team Haskell is with Chloe and Marcelo, 20 points, 10 and 10. And then all the way at the bottom, our good friend TJ Randolph, who picked Sarah Sherman and Mikey Longs at 9 and 6 with 15 points so far. Those are the draft standings after week number 4.
Interesting. I'll just say back to our previous discussion on Longfellow that if he did move to the desk and it was a guaranteed 1 spot per night, that would be a tough hit for Team TJ.
Yeah, might be the worst draft score in SNN history. But yeah, that's the update for all our friends who have their own drafts at home and want to follow along with the scores.
Thank you. We'll look forward to updating that next time. So, Victoria, final thoughts. Where can we reach out to you? All that good stuff.
My final thought is I'm impressed with Timothée Chalamet. I underestimated him, and maybe that helped, but very happy with this episode. It was really fun. As someone who's been spending the last few weeks of their life working on placing scenes in different parts of a show, I'm learning to appreciate that aspect so much more from SNL. So that being said, you can find me here on Instagram. My finale graduation show at the Second City is this Monday, November 20th at 8:30 p.m. My parents are going to be there. You can meet them. My whole family's going to be there, even my brothers. So it's going to be a really big show, and I'm actually hosting it. So feel free to stop by and see what all the talk's been about. But other
Are you
than
doing
that,
a monologue, Victoria?
a very short,
Okay,
45-second monologue.
all right.
But I do an outro as well. And then starting January, you can find me at the IO Theater with Malarkey Comedy performing every Wednesday night. But
Awesome. Great to have you back.
Watch that. Come to that after you watch this on Wednesdays. So,
Victoria, are you excited for Jason Momoa?
yes, he is great energy. And I think he's going to come and play really well with the show. I'm very excited for him. And he's hunky.
Hunky Johnson.
Yeah.
John, what about you? We have another countdown.
Yeah, well, we still got this week. We still got a countdown. So now we're up to 18, 17, and 16 tomorrow. So really getting up to some of the greats of the greats. Going to be some big reveals tomorrow night. I can't wait to do it. And joining me on that show will be Victoria Franso again. So we get to podcast together one more night tomorrow night. Also Will Norman as well. So it'll be really fun to talk through all of that with you, Victoria, and reveal 3 more names on the list. And if you didn't get enough John and Victoria, we got one more podcast for you this week. If you are a patron of the SNN, find us at patreon.com/the SNL Network. Victoria will be joining me on the SNL sketch breakdown this week. You still have a chance to vote, by the way, if you're a patron and haven't voted yet for which sketch you want us to talk about. Voting closes tonight, so Victoria and I can prepare for the show tomorrow to record that, to put that out for all of you. So that is that. And then, of course, we'll be back for the Hot Take Show right after Jason Momoa and Canadian Tate McRae on the show on Saturday night to perform and put on another great episode before we do it all over again next week and then break for Thanksgiving.
Awesome. And if you're a listener and you're interested in becoming a patron, John, how would you go about that?
Like I said, patreon.com/the
All right.
SNL network. You join. Really fun. We got a great Discord if you wanted to join and have some fun there. We also got some great exclusive patron perks. So, and you can talk to me whenever you want to talk about SNL.
We love you, patrons.
100%.
We love you so much.
All right. Well, that'll do it for real this time. I am Mike Murray. You can find me at SNL Mike Murray on Instagram and Twitter. I'm there all the time. I've been doing more live tweeting of the show, which has been fun. Watching it live is the way to go. So we will be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Victoria, you will be back with me, right? So you'll get a lot of Victoria this in
I know.
8 days.
I mean, apologies in advance for all the laughs you'll have with me. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
You guys think Mike is the lifeblood of the show, but Victoria brings it. So I'm excited that she's on every single week with you, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, and it's the day before American Thanksgiving. I have to clarify for the Canadians in the room. But so that just adds one more thing I'm grateful for is the show and the two of you. Platonically, like respectfully, as like colleagues.
Of course. I don't think you were declaring your love for us here.
Yeah. All right. So for Victoria Franso, Jon Schneider, I am Mike Murray of the SNN. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again